Heavy metal poisoning is a silent invader. Toxic metal ions sneak into the body and wreak havoc. And sometimes they come from unexpected places, like the seafood we enjoy. Now, I love sushi. Give me a spicy tuna roll any day. But if metals like mercury build up in fish, that's a real problem. Fortunately, chemistry gives us a powerful ally. Equilibrium reactions with large equilibrium constants trap and neutralize these dangerous metal ions, preventing them from causing harm. Understanding these reactions unlocks life-saving ways to detoxify the blood, helping to keep our bodies and our favorite foods safer. This is Real Chem. When someone ingests a heavy metal like mercury, we need to remove it quickly before it causes severe harm. Ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, EDTA, is a powerful binding molecule that captures metal ions. This reaction has a very large equilibrium constant, K, meaning it favors the products where the metal is bound to EDTA. Once bound, the metal can be excreted by the kidneys, making EDTA useful for removing toxic metals from the body. Let's break down how this binding works and why even a small number of escapees matters. In this reaction, EDTA acts like a chaperone, seeking out heavy metal ions and escorting them to the kidneys for removal. The large equilibrium constant, 3.1 by 10 to the 21, of this reaction means EDTA is great at its job. The reaction strongly favors binding. Let's imagine for a moment that K is infinitely large, meaning the reaction goes all the way to completion. Let's also imagine a blood sample with 1,000 mercury ions and 21,000 EDTA molecules. Since mercury is the limiting reagent, every one of those 1,000 mercury ions will get scooped up by the EDTA, leaving 20,000 EDTA molecules with nothing left to bind. But K isn't infinite. It's just really, really large. So instead of going all the way to completion, the reaction reaches equilibrium, where binding and unbinding happen at the same time. That big K value means almost all the mercury ions get captured, but a few manage to slip free, maybe one at any given moment. That's not enough to make a big dent in the number of bound mercury EDTA complexes. Whether there are 1,000 or 999 bound molecules, that difference is tiny. The same goes for free EDTA. Whether there are 20,000 or 20,001 unbound molecules, it doesn't change much. These are the majority species, so small shifts don't really matter. But for free mercury ions, even a tiny change makes a big difference. Going from 0 to 1 isn't just a small step. It's the difference between no metal in your blood and some metal in your blood. That's a big deal. Now, instead of counting individual molecules, we usually think in terms of concentration. For example, a mercury concentration of 3 micromolar in blood is a sign of mercury poisoning. To treat it, we use 600 micromolar EDTA. But will this capture enough of the mercury? Let's find out. We again start by imagining what would happen if the reaction went to completion. Mercury is our limiting reagent, so it drops to 0. From this change, we determine how the other components adjust. The results tells us how much EDTA remains and how much metal EDTA complex forms. These are our majority species, and we now know their concentrations. Mercury is the minority species. If K were infinitely large, none would remain. But since K is just very large, a tiny fraction of mercury ions stay unbound. Using the concentrations of the majority species from our limiting reactant calculation, we apply the K expression to determine how much mercury remains free. The result? A minuscule amount well below the 3 micromolar threshold for mercury poisoning. In other words, by treating with EDTA, we successfully reduced free mercury to a safe level. This two-phase strategy makes solving reactions with large K much easier. First, we imagine the reaction going to completion, allowing us to use limiting reagents to determine the concentrations of the majority species. Then, with those concentrations in hand, we shift to equilibrium calculations to find a tiny amount of the minority species that remains. This approach is especially useful in cases like heavy metal poisoning, where even a small amount of unbound mercury can be dangerous.